It's the final play of the Super Bowl. Draw up the play.
Okay, the Tom Brady goes left, and Tony Romo goes right, and Bo Foofer throws the ball down the middle, and they meet and they kiss.
That's a good play.
Did they
All right,
win?
welcome to the cast pod, everyone. Yes, you won. I'm Carter.
And I'm Calum.
So this was an idea. I think I pitched it.
Mm-hmm.
So as you may or may not know, me, Kevin, and Calum are part of a fantasy football league. That's a lot of our high school friends. We've been doing it for 4 years now, or are we on year 5?
I
Trying to
think
remember.
it's 4, if I remember right.
It's somewhere around there. I think, yeah, I think that's about right. But yeah, and not too long ago, starting last year, we ran into a little problem where Jason wasn't updating his team, so he would have empty spots. So we came up with the idea of having Callum and Jason as a super team.
Mm-hmm.
Jason would do the drafting, and Callum would do the picking. Um, which is funny because Callum does not follow football. How
Nope.
much would you say you know about football?
I would say less than the average person. Like even somebody that doesn't watch football, I probably know less than them.
Yes, so that's what I'm working with here, people.
Mm-hmm.
I will say I have learned to, like, my time when I went to NYU. That was the first time I really had to grapple with the idea that some very sports literate, because our high school is pretty into sports. Like, they made a big deal about the Fightin' Phils and the Red October, and you know, the sports teams were a big deal. And then when you get
I,
to,
I like your funny words, Magic Man.
ooh, well, no, that's a ghost who's
I
also
was
illegal.
gonna
Wrong energy.
uh,
Also, none of this nerd shit. This is where the cool guys hang out and abuse steroids and have
oh,
brain
yeah.
problems. Um,
Will Smith.
so great start. Absolutely ace bangers start. Yeah, so I'm going to try to explain the big ideas of the NFL to Callum. Not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily how the game is played, but the big stories around the game. I'll try to explain a little bit of technique and the rules and whatnot as needed. I'll get into a little bit of the deep lore that defines this over 100-year-old institution. And hopefully, by the end of the year, he'll be able to have a conversation by the water cooler of his lizard school and say, "Man, them footballs, huh?"
How about them balls? Hmm?
Exactly. Okay. So, do you have any questions going in?
Um, Probably too many. So what is the theme of today? What am I trying to learn today?
So, today is going to be because the NFL season starts in exactly 7 days. On Thursday, September 8th, the Super Bowl champion Los Angeles Rams will host the Buffalo Bills for the opening game, sort of the opening ceremony, effectively. The NFL has been doing this for a while now, where the Super Bowl champion will host a interesting team on their home field Thursday before the first Sunday. Basically, football games are played on 3 to 4 days now, not including that COVID year where there was literally a game every day of the week because they didn't want to cancel any games. Um, Sunday is the main day. That is where 99% of the games will be, including the Sunday night game. There is Monday Night Football, which has kind of lost its luster over the last few years, but that used to be like the really fun prime time game. And
Oh,
Thursday night has become a super prominent just in like the last 6 to 7 years. Like they added Thursday as an additional day. And they also occasionally will have Saturday night games, but those only happen at the very end. But yes, this stream will be all about just sort of the big headlines going into the year and a quick rundown of the. Oh, first trivia question: how many teams are in the NFL?
27?
32.
Ah,
Yes,
knew it.
there has been some expansion. But yes, I will just be speed running through the 32 teams to give you just a sense of where they are going this season.
Wait, can I list them?
All right, let's see how many teams you can list. I'm actually curious.
All right. So we have the Eagles.
Hmm.
We have the Cowboys.
Hmm.
I'm not going to be able to name the places they're all associated with, but I can at least give
That's
you
fine.
some of them.
They
We have
move
the
around a lot.
Texans,
Yes,
the Broncos,
correct.
the Dolphins,
Hmm.
the Chargers.
Yes, they're the Joe's team now.
Yeah, I also like them because they made an anime
Oh, yeah.
commercial. Um, there's the Buccaneers.
Hmm.
There's the Ravens,
Yes.
the Giants,
Hmm.
uh, the Patriots.
You're doing well. This is already a third of the league.
Really? Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, you
Well,
got it.
it's gonna fall off real quick. Um, there's the. Did I say the Raiders?
Yes. Or no, you didn't. 11.
Nice. The Washington football team, the Commanders.
Yes, they changed their name again.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The Chiefs.
Yes.
I was about to say the Redskins, but that's the Washington football
Same
team, right?
team. Yes.
The Browns,
Yes.
the Seahawks.
Mm-hmm. All right,
Nice.
15. Halfway
Okay.
through.
I I think. Oh geez. I'm running out. I'm trying to think of
Come on.
locations.
Think
Uh,
think harder for this one.
oh, the Buffalo Bills.
Mhm.
Ah, okay, okay. Um, there's got to be other birds, right? I'm starting to
There's
think
a lot
about
of birds.
baseball
I'm trying to think
teams.
of the
Oh
birds you
no.
didn't get.
The Cardinals?
Yes.
Really? I thought that was a baseball team.
Yeah. For some reason, there's also a baseball team, but the baseball
Oh.
team's in St. Louis. The NFL one's in
Ooh,
Arizona.
the Falcons.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Um, uh, Oof.
I should have
I
been
said
writing
the
down the ones you were getting. Now I'm trying to remember which ones you didn't get.
yeah. No,
I
I said
remember
the
them quite briefly.
Ravens. Um, I feel like I'm missing most of like the central U.S.
Yeah, there are
Um,
a lot of you're
oh,
forgetting a lot of the Great Lakes team.
oh God.
There are a
Oh, the
lot of teams in the
Lions.
Great Lakes. Yes, the Lions.
Nice. Um, uh, uh,
Heba Deba Durban is my clue.
the Swedes.
Oh,
uh, oh, the Vikings.
yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Come on.
yeah. Okay, okay, okay. Oh man, I think I'm out.
That's still
Uh,
pretty good. All right, you're
yeah.
not a complete loss. Like there's room to grow here. I can work with it.
Woo!
All right. So let's get into it. Feel free to stop me at any point you need to ask questions because I'm going to be throwing a lot of terms and ideas at you. I'm
All
going to
right.
be You're going to be going through a multiverse of madness. If you need to stop and reflect on being paint, it's okay to stop and reflect on being paint.
Yeah, that's gonna be tough for me.
I understand. But so going into the season, the NFL at large is kind of dealing with this is a weird transition year. COVID really threw the league for a loop because the NFL is the one sports league that has been growing at an exponential pace. And the COVID years were the first time they actually were losing revenue. It's kind of changed a lot of how teams have approached team building because there is less money to go around. And everyone is kind of waiting because Amazon and a lot of other places are trying to muscle their way into that revenue. Amazon now is going to host a lot of the Thursday night football games. So, a big
Mm.
cash revenue. Basically, the next 3 years are going to be big boom time for the NFL. In terms of big stories, one of the biggest league wide is this offseason was freaking bananas. This was probably the most dramatic offseason in terms of the biggest names switching teams. Um,
Ah,
these are some of the names you might know because they're the quarterbacks.
yeah.
So Russell Wilson, who has been a Seattle Seahawks quarterback for his entire career, got
He
traded
was in an
to.
Eminem song.
Yes, exactly. Oh yeah,
Mhm.
he is. Yes, he fell into the third round and then became a, well, a legend might be a strong word at this point, but yeah. So he went from Seattle to the Denver Broncos. Matt Ryan, who had played on the Atlanta Falcons his entire life, is now on the Indianapolis Colts. And Carson Wentz isn't. Carson Wentz basically got kicked out of Indianapolis, chased out by an angry mob, and is now on the Washington Commanders.
Wasn't
Um,
he on the Eagles?
yes, he was originally an Eagle. He, by all accounts, did not take getting injured and then watching the team well without him well. Burned that bridge,
Oh,
proceeded
cause
to go to the
cause
Colts.
that Nick guy, Nick
Yes,
Foles.
Nick
Yeah.
Foles won the Super Bowl and then got a statue, which, I could understand being upset about to a certain extent. And then he went to the Colts and crapped the bed in a way that I will explain shortly. Um,
Hmm.
and then the wide receivers are where it got really cuckoo bananas. So Christian Kirk, and this is probably the only time I'm going to reference this guy. He is the middest of mid receivers. He's like a number two receiver. Like he's not the guy you throw, not the first guy you look to throw to. He's like the second or third. The Jacksonville Jaguars gave him one of the biggest contracts any receiver had gotten that year. So then every other receiver is like, well, I want that kind of money. So Devontae Adams of the Green Bay Packers moved. Tyreek Hill of the Kansas City Chiefs moved. Just in general, this was a big year for jersey swapping in a way that the NFL just really isn't used to. Like big guys, especially quarterbacks, do not move. Like they are with their team ride or die. Like hell, Tom Brady leaving the Patriots was basically unprecedented. The only other big example of like that is when Peyton Manning left the Colts, and that's because he had gotten injured the year before, and they didn't
The
want him anymore.
Colts. Dang.
Yes, the Colts. Um,
Didn't think of that one.
yes, they're kind of
Um,
adjacent. Brady.
so are they all leaving for the same reasons, or like they just don't like their teams anymore, or like what's up?
It
They got beef?
It varies from situation to situation. Matt Ryan and Russell Wilson, well, apparently the relationship between the Seahawks and Russell Wilson was a lot more toxic than we were led to believe. There's still a lot of bad. I don't know if you remember, but the last time Russell Wilson played in the Super Bowl, he threw an interception that cost him the game, and basically it
Word.
destroyed the team. There was a lot of resentment because they're like, why didn't we just run the ball? Why did you let Russell screw this up for us? Um, and the Seahawks were kind of falling apart as a team. They weren't drafting well. A lot of their best players left. So there was an understanding that it was time to move on. Also, the same with Matt Ryan, where it's like his chance to win a Super Bowl with the Falcons is over, and they kind of need to just accept they're not going to be good and blow it up. For a lot of other
Hmm.
players, it's hard for me to psychoanalyze players. Like I try not to do that, but like a lot of it is, well, one, if you can get more money, take more money. Devonte Adams, for example, just played with college quarterback Derek Carr, um, and I do think a lot of it is. See, this is uncommon for the NFL, but not the NBA. The NBA is famous for people like there are players who change teams every year who are like relatively high profile players. I think some of that energy of it's not about the team, it's your brand is really starting to become in vogue in the
It's not
NFL, if
about the
that makes
plan,
sense.
it's about the pilot.
Yes, exactly. Like no one cares no one cared who was the Maverick until Tom Cruise got in the plane. Wait, is the plane called
Mm.
Maverick? No, that's
I think I think he's called Maverick.
yes, I just realized that metaphor didn't work at all.
That's okay.
Uh, but yes. And the other big story I would say this year is this is the first year in a while where sort of controversy and drama is really pulling the NFL back. Like when we were growing up, like the 2008ish to 2010 range, like the NFL was kind of really slumming. Like they had a kind of high profile incidents with individual players. Like Roger Goodell, the commissioner of the league, had been brought in to kind of clean it up, and it wasn't quite working. There was a scandal called Bounty Gate, where it turns out the defensive coordinator for the New Orleans Saints, was paying players to injure. Basically, it was a bounty system where they're like, if you hit this guy here, you'll get this amount of money. If you injure this guy, you'll get that.
That
And
sounds
that was
like
combined.
mob time stuff.
Oh, yes, it's insane that that was allowed to happen. And when you combine that with the fact, like all of the CTE concussion stuff, the Will Smith stuff, as you describe it,
Yes, yes.
like the league was just kind of really slumming because, like, oh, this league is kind of mean and nasty, and like people are getting really, really hurt. And the last couple years have kind of cleaned up their image. Like Roger Goodell leaned into being a meme. They've really been pushing a more diverse sort of they've been really pushing a more diverse marketing system. I don't know if you've seen. There's an ad that literally starts with "The NFL is gay," and then it like goes to black and queer and bi, and I'm like, all right, I see what you're doing here. But opening with "The NFL is gay" seems like that movie, The Dilemma.
That sounds so. I can imagine how quickly that ad would be memed. Like, it's
I'm surprised it isn't
just
memed more,
cut
to
it
be
off
honest.
of the NFL is gay, and then that's just it.
It's literally like the bit from the movie The Dilemma, where Vince Vaughn's trailer by smart cars are gay, and you're just like, what is this? But yeah, the NFL has had a string of really bad scandals this summer. I think I talked to you about the Deshaun Watson situation. Um,
Yes.
that's the biggest black eye. Deshaun Watson was formerly a Houston Texans quarterback who demanded a trade, and shortly after, um, a lot of massage therapists who worked with the team and specifically him reported, and I will spare this stream the grislier details, but basically accused him of conduct ranging from uh, solicitation and sexual harassment straight up to assault. Um, uh,
Yikes.
yes, and through a very convoluted process that really doesn't help our discussion here. An independent arbiter decided to give him 6 game suspension, uh, solely based on the precedent that other players had been given for similar situations. Which similar, I say in quotes because this is unprecedented, the sheer scope of the accusations and the number of accusations. The
Hmm.
NFL was going to basically throw out that ruling and give him a full year, if not more. Like they were just going to suspend him indefinitely without pay.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the two sides compromised. He is going to be suspended for 11 games with required therapy and a loss of several contracts. The NFL already seems to be regretting it because it seems like there was an understanding that he would show some level of remorse in the press, and he has not. He continues to deny any wrongdoing, which just makes the NFL look really, really bad. Like in a way that is, in a way where I'm like, man, is the commissioner going to lose his job for this? Probably not. Um, and they also had a really bad, and obviously it's not as bad as this individual person's actions, but basically, the Dolphins fired their coach last summer, Brian Flores, one of the few black coaches in the NFL. And Brian Flores immediately came around and said, "Hey, so not only basically he made 2 accusations. One, that the Dolphins owner was trying to basically bribe him to lose games. That the Dolphins owner was offering him $100,000 for every game he lost in his first year because they wanted to get an earlier draft pick to get a quarterback. Um,
Hmm.
and on top of that, it was also implied that as Tom Brady was getting ready to leave the Patriots, the Dolphins owner was trying to basically the term used in the sport is tampering. Like you're not supposed to try and get another player to come to your team while they're still on another team.
Like
Like
how Tom
basically,
Brady tampered with his son's lips.
yes. I'm glad that that's one of the things you know about the NFL because it really does need to be remarked upon a lot.
I mean, you can't just let that slide.
Mm-mm. It should never be let go. As far as I'm concerned, it bans him from the Hall of Fame. Um,
Yeah.
But yeah, basically, they were trying to get Tom to leave the Patriots, come to Miami when his contract expired. And there was the idea that he would also buy a stake in the team, so he would be an owner and player at the same time, which is insane. That's never happened. I'm pretty sure it's illegal.
Hmm.
And the NFL basically they took away basically they gave him a slap on the wrist. Um, and took but they did take away one of their first round draft picks, which is huge because the Dolphins needed those if they wanted to get a new quarterback. Like basically, it's so interesting how they worded it because they're like, "Oh, this is only because they were tampering with Brady. We weren't able to prove the quote unquote tanking accusations, even though the punishment they gave them feels like they found evidence of tanking." Because that's a frustrating thing with the NFL. Like like the Deshaun Watson stuff, they're like, eventually people will let that go, but we can't have people think the games are rigged because that'll get people to stop watching. And I'm like, and that's why everyone has kind of a yucky feeling going into this year, which should be exciting. Players have been moving. Like the Bengals and the Bills, the laughing stocks of the NFL, are now two favorites to win the Super Bowl. Uh,
Whoa.
the teams in Los Angeles are finally good. Baker Mayfield's not in commercials anymore. Um, and we'll get to that. But yeah, it's a weird energy going into this season. Um, and like in general, I've been a little down on the NFL the last couple years because I feel like their approach to COVID was very bad. They were one of the first companies to really pioneer like just put your head down, put your head down, put your head down, pretend it's not happening, and we'll get through this.
Hmm.
Which resulted in a lot of crazy stuff. Uh, Resulted in a game a few years ago where the Broncos didn't have a quarterback.
Whoa.
All of their quarterbacks had been hanging out, and because one of them tested positive, they all had to quarantine. But they didn't want to cancel or reschedule the game, so the Broncos had to play a wide receiver at quarterback.
I was gonna say, how did they throw the ball then?
He threw the ball like 10 times. I think he completed one pass. It was a disaster. Honestly, it was one of the most embarrassing things I've ever seen. Like, and that's a testament to the NFL's power. Like that should have been a humiliation, and instead everyone's like, "Oh, the resilience of these young men." It's like, no, this is dumb. Someone's gonna get hurt. Like, it really was. I like if I was the commissioner, I would like do that. Like I would break off a piece of ice and just flow down to sea in shame. But that's just me.
Yeah, that's a reasonable response, I'd say.
Yes. But now that we've gotten sort of the broad scope, let's quickly go through the NFL teams. And this is how you'll learn all the different teams.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, so we're going to start. So the NFL is broken up into two conferences, the National Football Conference and the American Football Conference. They used to be rival leagues, and then they merged together in the 60s, and that's when the first Super Bowl happened.
Oh.
Yes. Basically, the AFL or the AFC formed because this guy was like, "I want a team. I want to put a team in Dallas," and the NFL at the time was like, "No, you can't do that." So he's like, "F
No.
you! I'm gonna make my own league." And then he ended up moving the team to Kansas City within a year anyway.
The Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, and they got to play in the first Super Bowl fittingly. But yes, and then each conference is broken up into four divisions: the North, South, East, West. Honestly, some of it's really sweaty getting some of these fit into their regions. It's mostly just because you have to organize it some way. Um, Basically, an NFL season, you will play your division. You'll play all the teams in your division twice, at home and away. You'll play one division from the other conference, and then you'll have a smattering of other games based on your record. So the teams that are the best get harder opponents, and the teams that are worse theoretically get easier opponents. So we will start with the Eagles division, the NFC East.
Okay.
All right. So the Dallas Cowboys, they're the first team. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Out of all the teams this year, they have just sort of they have terrible vibes. Their vibes are really really off this year. Um, they lost in the playoffs last year in possibly the most embarrassing fashion we've seen in a long time. Basically, they had like 30 seconds to make a play and then stop the clock um, to try and score a touchdown. Uh, they quarterback sneaked it. They got a first down, and then they just ran out of time because they couldn't get all of their players to the line in time. It was one of the most inexplicable plays I've
Huh.
ever seen. Um, Basically, the Cowboys, and then they basically just let a lot of their best players go. Like, they had kind of a big talent drain. They lost their star receiver, Amari Cooper. Um, they had a couple defensive players leave. And there's just kind of a listlessness with their team. And like you might know some of the names. Dak Prescott's their quarterback. Ezekiel Elliott is their running back. They have good people. CeeDee Lamb is a really talented wide receiver. They have this guy Micah Parsons, who is just kind of a freak of nature. He's a line. He can play basically any spot on the defense. He can do whatever, and yet like no one believes in them, and it's because they are the embodiment of what they're the embodiment of like a rich guy ruining everything. So their
The only
owner is this guy.
reason that I know anything about the Cowboys is because Tim the Tapman is a streamer and YouTuber that I follow, and he is a Cowboys fan, and
Oh,
he has played Fortnite with Ezekiel Elliott.
really? Oh, that's kind of
Yes.
interesting. I don't know. Maybe Ezekiel Elliott's interesting. Like, but yeah, basically, so they're owned by this guy Jerry Jones, uber rich, but it's not enough to own one of the most profitable NFL teams. He has to feel like he's the genius behind it all. So he very much meddles. Like Ezekiel Elliott probably shouldn't be their starting running back anymore. The dude's old. He's gotten too many carries. He's out of shape. He tore his knee last year and like limped through the season. And they have a better
Oof.
running back behind him. But Jerry Jones gave Ezekiel Elliott a lot of money. So he's like, this is my guy. He has to play. Their coach, Mike McCarthy, is basically a stooge. Like, I didn't even know the guy doesn't call plays, even though he's the head coach. And that's not abnormal. Like, some head coaches are more like vibes guys, they're more like broader strategy, or maybe they're defensive coaches. He doesn't call offense, defense. And his team, he's not even good at like managing the game. Like, he doesn't timeouts. It literally is like, what the fuck do you do? Wait,
What does he do?
nothing. He's just there. Like he's literally just there because otherwise they would have to get a real coach, and Jerry Jones can't have the spotlight on a real coach. Um, yeah, people have been very down on them. It feels like they're just not going to cut it this year. All right, next up, the New York
Wait,
Giants. Yes, question.
did Tony Romo play for the Cowboys?
You are correct. That was Tony Romo's former
Yes.
team. Their current quarterback, Dak Prescott, is actually the guy who like usurped the throne. They're like, guys, this Dak guy's a little better. We should probably just play him. Um, Tony Romo is infamous now because he basically convinced a whole lot of NFL players they commentary, and none of them are as good as him. Particular Drew Brees, the former Saints quarterback. Um, Next up, New York Giants. The New York Giants are one of my sleeper
Oh
teams
wait,
this year.
before you move on to the Giants, I was gonna say I know Tony Romo because in Macklemore's song American, he talks about the Cowboys and Tony Romo.
Do you know all of these things through rap music?
My knowledge is scattered, and so anytime I remember why I know something, I will bring it up. Just wait until we get to Brett Favre.
He's not. He's actually in a lot of trouble. Apparently, he stole money from like a welfare system, but
Oh,
that doesn't really relate to this.
all right, we'll bring him up whenever his team comes up. But on to the
Oh,
Giants.
yes. We'll get to him. All right. So the New York Giants, they are like one of my sleeper teams because they basically hit rock bottom last year, where their coach, it was literally, it was literally like 3rd and 15, and they were near their own goal line, and they literally just had the quarterback basically take a knee because they're like, I don't trust. The coach was basically like, I don't trust my team not to fuck this up somehow and like get the ball intercepted or fumble it. So I'm just going to wave the white flag. Uh, their coach, Judge Judge, was fired, and they brought in Brian Dayball, who was the offensive coach for the Bills. He's kind of the guy who's considered the mastermind behind the Bills becoming really, really good. And they're like in a weird transitional year because like their quarterback Daniel Jones is the embodiment of mediocre. He's famous for that play against the Eagles where he was running like 50 yards and there was no one around him and then he just tripped. Um, yes, he just
That's
face
funny.
plants. You've definitely seen that meme, and that's basically defined his career. They have a really good running back in Saquon Barkley, who just can't get healthy. They have a smattering of talent in the wide receiver and defensive line areas, and it seems like there is a little light at the end of the tunnel, but we can't tell quite yet if it's like civilization or a train about to hit everything again. Like it really they're very much a come back to a next year team because we're using this season to decide who we're keeping, who we're cutting, and how we're going to start rebuilding. The Washington Commanders, they are a mess. They very much are of these scandals and controversies facing them. So their owner, Dan Snyder, is a scumbag. Apparently,
From
he
Nickelodeon?
no, honestly, he's kind of like the guy from Nickelodeon.
Does he
Um,
make all the football players show their feet?
no, I mean, I'm God, I'm literally weighing if it's better or worse. I mean, I guess the guy from Nickelodeon, it was with minors and stuff, so it's probably worse. But yeah, he's like he sexually harasses employees. He like tries to basically tried to prostitute out a lot of cheerleaders and just created a very bad work environment. Currently,
Yikes.
he's dodging a subpoena. He's on his boat in international waters, and Congress is trying to get him to come home. Uh, and honestly, that's more interesting than anything about the actual football team, um,
I
especially
wish
their
they would
name.
have. Yeah, I wish they would have kept the Washington football team
That
name.
is everything you need to know about Dan Snyder is the fact that people had been begging him to change the name Redskins for decades because it is a racial slur. And
Hmm.
he was like, "Fine, we're just not going to have a team name." And then they choose commanders seemingly out of a hat. You know, the Redskins used to have a song called "Hail to the Redskins," and now if you wanted to make that work, it would be "Hail to the Commies."
I love that. I
Yes,
love that it's
which
short for commies.
it's kind of perfect and kind of sums up. And it is a shame because this used to be one of the premier franchises in the NFL. Like, there was a period before the Falcons existed, before the Jaguars existed, before the Panthers existed, where basically everything
Oh, the
south
Panthers. Oh, Kennemex gonna kill me.
yes, we might have to edit this. Everything south of Maryland but north of Florida, they were the only team in town. And they won Super Bowls and they were prestigious. And then this freaking douchebag takes over the team and basically he gets to do whatever he wants because not basically all of the owners are like mutually assured destruction because all of them have skeletons in their closet. And Dan Snyder is very much seems like the kind of man who, if he's going down, he's dragging everyone else down with the ship. Um, Honestly, the only thing I find interesting about, like, again, they have good players. Terry McLaurin is a Chase Young is a very talented defensive player. They picked up Carson Wentz from the Colts basically because they're just like, I don't know, man. We need someone to play here. I do feel bad for Carson Wentz because it seems like I imagine it would be a mental health problem to watch your backup win a Super Bowl. And he had basically when he was with the Colts last year, he needed to win one out of two games to end the year to go to the playoffs, and had two flame out performances where he was just horrific. But he also had
Mm.
COVID. They literally changed. So he tested positive for COVID 5 days before a game, and they changed the rules so he could play. And like, a lot of our friends have had COVID, and they were not ready to play a football game within 5 days. And
Oh
I feel
no.
like it's weirdly unremarked that he had to play sick. Eh, But that's just a testament to the fact that no one likes him. Like he's a very unpopular man.
I would
The
also just like
funniest.
to point out these are all NFC East teams, right?
Mhm.
And we have Philadelphia, New York, Texas, and Washington.
Yes. This again. See, it used to be better when there was only three divisions and it was East, Central, and West. It felt like that was a lot more flexible. People have been proposing changes to the division system for forever, but at this point, when you're in a 100-year-old institution, it's easier not to change things.
Hmm. It
And
just
that brings
doesn't
us.
feel very East.
Oh no, that's probably the most egregious. Most of the others are generally okay.
Okay.
Um, And that brings us to the last team in this conference, the Eagles,
Woo!
our hometown team.
Home
They,
team.
um, um, yeah, they are the most interesting team. People are like low key betting them for the Super Bowl now, which I'm like, all right, guys, we got to come a little bit. But they were a surprise team last year. They basically captured two big ideas that I want to impart from the NFL for you. One,
Mhm.
knowing when to go for it, knowing when to put all the chips on the table and really make a run for it, and knowing when you need to get a great quarterback, and adapting to the players you have. Because last year, everything started out terrible. They tried to pass the ball a lot. They didn't have the people for that. They tried to play a really like athletic, crazy defense. They didn't have that. So they spent this whole offseason getting good receivers. Like they got AJ Brown. They who's this incredible wide receiver from the Titans. They shored up their defense with a lot of like really physical, athletic freaks. They have the players to play the kind of game they want to play now. But is their quarterback good enough? Jalen Hurts is a great runner. By all accounts, he's a great leader. He's everything you want, except he might not be very good.
I
He's
hope
not
he
the
gets
best.
better soon.
Yes, because I do like him. We all want to like him. But basically,
Cause,
the Eagles are
cause he hurts.
all right. Um, basically, like we've reached a point in the NFL where Nick Foles, it almost feels like Nick Foles couldn't win a Super Bowl now. Like you need to have a top five quarterback to win a Super Bowl. And this is a good year because the Eagles will probably make the playoffs and probably know how good they are. And if Jalen Hurts doesn't elevate them to competing for a Super Bowl, they have the resources. They basically have built this perfect little nest for a bird to be like, oh, I want to hang out here. So the
Or
next time a
perhaps
Russell
an
Wilson,
eagle.
now you're getting it.
Now I'm in it.
Yes. So like the next time a Russell Wilson wants to change scenery, the Eagles are in a place to do that. Or maybe they will win the Super Bowl and they'll have to give Jalen Hurts a lot of money. All right, moving on. I really got to get quicker with these. The NFC
Okay.
West.
Hmm.
The Cardinals are a fucking dumpster fire. Um, they wasted their first round pick trading for a washed up wide receiver named Hollywood Brown from the Ravens, who's never been that good. Their star wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins has like a some lengthy suspension for using performance enhancing drugs. Their coach kind of just sucks, and basically his entire career has been his teams crashing and burning in the back half of the season. And their quarterback Kyler Murray, they were so determined not to give him money. They started leaking that he was like a crybaby and a finger pointer, and then his contract stipulated that he had to watch 4 hours of film every week, and he couldn't be playing video games while doing it. They literally had to include you can't play video games in his contract. And I can
That's
see it.
unreasonable.
Yes, he is a Twitch streamer, and you can kind of see it because they lost in the playoffs last year to the Rams in humiliating fashion. They got romped. And the whole time, it literally looked like Kyler Murray was getting tilted. He looked like he wanted to slam a controller, like he wanted to pull an Isaac Kim and yeet a controller through his TV.
I have seen him play Fortnite.
Yes. Yeah, the vibes are all off on this team. Out of all the teams who are expected, like usually a bunch of playoff teams don't make the playoffs the next year. They are probably my number one. I just don't like their feelings at all. All right.
Hmm.
The San Francisco 49ers are hilarious. So last year they drafted this quarterback, Trey Lance, super physically gifted, but not a lot of experience. So the idea was like, all right, he'll sit for a year. We have Jimmy Garoppolo, who Kieran will always remind us has sex with porn stars. Um, Jimmy
Like our late
Garoppolo,
president.
indeed. Um, but yes, Jimmy G is like relatively talented, but he's kind of been elevated. His status has been elevated. Patriots backup quarterback, and Tom Brady was so fucking bothered by him that he forced the Patriots to trade him. Like because Tom Brady had no chill, we probably made this guy who's like a B minus out to be an A minus. Um, so the idea was like the 49ers, they played through the season, they almost got to a Super Bowl. Jimmy G has this teary press conference because he's like, oh, I'm probably getting traded this. And then he just doesn't get traded. And
Hmm.
he's still on the team. And keep in mind, he literally wasn't practicing with the team. He was literally practicing on a separate field. They didn't give him the playbook, but now he's stuck on the team because no one wanted to like shell out the money to get him. It's literally, and it's so awkward because now it's like, well, if Trey Lance does bad, do they bring in Jimmy G? Like, it just kind of messes up their whole system they had in place, which is hilarious.
Yeah, that's
Um,
awkward.
yes, it literally is like you were in an open marriage, and then you know one of you got weird about it, and you're like, well, what are we going to do about this third person? This third person can't be here anymore. You understand that, right?
Hmm.
All right. The Seattle
Interesting.
Seahawks. Yes, the Seattle Seahawks are kind of a dumpster fire right now. The team, they're probably one of the most likely to have the worst league. I honestly don't have anything interesting to say about them other than uh, it's very clear they wanted Jimmy G, but they were hoping the 49ers would cut them, and the 49ers called their bluff.
Oof.
Yes. The Rams. The Rams are the current Super Bowl champions. They
Oh
are the
yeah.
embodiment of putting all the chips on the table. Last year, they gave up a whole bunch of draft picks to get Matthew Stafford out of Detroit. Very talented quarterback who never had a chance because the Lions are snake bitten. They ended up winning the Super Bowl. They are the embodiment of stars and scrubs. Like they have a bunch of decent players and then a handful of big names. Like they have Matthew Stafford quarterback. They have Cooper Kupp at wide receiver. They got Odell Beckham, who is one of the most well. He is no longer on the team, but they had him.
He's
They
that
had
guy that caught the ball by like reaching backwards.
yes, that is why how people know him from that insane play when he was on. Uh, they have Jalen Ramsey, probably the best defensive back in the league. They have Aaron Donald, a defensive lineman who, if we're being honest, is probably one of the five greatest players to ever play the game, regardless of position. But because the
Oh,
league is so tilted toward quarterbacks, yeah, he's a freak of nature. He is a fundamentally angry person on the field who just literally eats people. Like it takes three people to keep him at bay. Basically, he went ultra focus mode during the Super Bowl and just completely destroyed the Bengals. It was genuinely an all-time great performance. They're expected to probably run it back and well, they're one of the favorites to repeat, but apparently Matthew Stafford's elbow just isn't working right. He has some kind of tennis elbow, and they just haven't been throwing. So now the vibes are really off.
hmm.
All right, moving on to the NFC North, and these ones are at least bunched up well. The Bears are kind of my favorite pick to have the worst record in the league.
There's a
Uh,
Bears team.
yes, the Chicago Bears. Mike Ditka played for them. They're actually one of like the franchises in NFL history, but they've been bad for so long. It's so weird that they have so much prestige, but they're never good. They're kind of like the New York Knicks in that way. But they drafted a really cool quarterback last year named Justin. Super athletic, really strong arm, kind of cool leader. And then the coach got fired, and the GM got fired, and the new management seems hell bent on not playing Justin Fields or getting rid of Justin Fields. Basically, like there's no talent around him. Their defense is fine. They have probably the worst offensive line in the league. During interviews, they won't even say they're committed to helping him get better. Uh, it's shitty. They're a pile poop, and it's so sad. And I feel bad. Like honestly, my only take from them is Justin Fields needs to start mapping out his PR campaign to like restore his image so he can get back playing for a better team.
Wow.
Yeah, like I don't have anything funny. It's kind of sad.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, and it sucks because like so many quarterbacks who don't work out, it's because of the circumstances, and this is the embodiment of that, where a guy goes to a team that doesn't know what to do with him and doesn't really believe in them and only drafted him as a formality, and then just kind of use him as a scapegoat when things go.
See, when you said workout, I thought you meant exercise, and I'm like, imagine being a full-time athlete and not exercising, and then I realized
Oh,
what you meant.
trust me, there are guys like that. I will probably save this. We're probably going to split this into two episodes when we talk about the AFC East. But my deep
Hmm.
lore story for the week is going to be about a man who absolutely did not work out, like
Wait,
get in
who?
shape. Jamarcus Russell. You have that
Ah,
to look forward to.
oh dear.
The Detroit Lions, or as someone accidentally called the draft, the Detroit Loins. One of my favorite tweets ever is that motherfucker said loins.
Yeah.
Um, Lions, it's insane that the Lions might make the playoffs. If I'm going to impart one bit about the NFC for you, is that the NFC is very weak this year. A lot of talent is left. A lot of the good quarterbacks moved to the AFC. There's a general lack of talent where the AFC, it's like, God, who's not like one of these teams isn't going to make the playoffs. The NFC is, Jesus, one of these teams is going to make the playoffs.
I
Um,
have two fun facts about the Lions that I know.
Hit me.
One
Well,
being
Eminem's one of them, isn't it?
no. I know that they are generally regarded as one of the worst teams
Good.
in the NFL, and I know that they are the favorite team of the streamer Ninja.
That is interesting.
Yeah,
That's actually interesting.
that is his
I was
favorite football team.
I was born in Detroit, so I do have some affinity for the team. Yes, they are a snake bitten cursed franchise. They had Barry Sanders, who's one of the greatest running backs of he played in 2 playoff games, which is not very good. And
Mm,
recently, Calvin Johnson, who is probably the most physically gifted receiver of all time, retired in his prime at like age 30 because he just was like, I'm never going to win here, and I don't want to get hurt trying to do it. Um,
understandable.
but the vibes are finally good. They're a good vibes team, actually. They brought in a coach named Dan Campbell, who is a freaking maniac. He's a former tight end. He in his opening press conference, he said, "I want to build a team that'll bite off kneecaps." Uh, he talks a lot about drinking espresso. Apparently, he does triple shots a day.
Oh
Uh,
my god.
he bawled his eyes out during a press conference where they lost because the Baltimore Ravens kicker kicked the longest field goal in history. And as crazy as all that sounds, it works. Like when you have a bunch of 20 somethings on your team, like a bunch of young, scrappy guys on your team, that's the kind of stuff, that's how you get guys who are like third stringers who have to play because of an injury to keep fighting, even though your team's 1-5. And now they actually have a decent amount of talent. They have a good running back in DeAndre Swift. Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's literally named after the Egyptian sun god, is a pretty decent wide receiver. They got they picked up someone in the draft who's this incredible wide receiver who's really fast, whose name fails me right now. And they ended up picking up Aiden Hutchinson in the draft, who went to Michigan and is a very good defensive lineman. Like they might not make the playoffs this year, but they are going to make the playoffs within the next 3 years because they built it. The Packers have been. I feel like the Packers are kind of done. I feel like their window is kind of closed. They've had Aaron Rodgers playing at an MVP level. I'll just say, I hate Aaron Rodgers. I do not like him. I think he's a bad dude. I think he's a tool.
For
Um,
any particular reason or just
Well, one,
in
he's
general?
very much a me guy. Uh, Last year during the draft, he just announced he wanted to be traded, and then they didn't end up trading him, and he made a big fuss about it for the whole year. He lied about being vaccinated, basically. He like danced around it by saying he was inoculated. Apparently, he was doing some holistic medicine thing,
Oh,
and then he
I
ended up getting COVID
remember.
and possibly endangering a bunch of his teammates.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah, yeah. I
and
remember this guy.
and now he's going even crazy. He just openly is like, "Yeah, I'm doing my
Doing
mind over."
what?
He's doing some kind of hallucinogenic that's really
You're cutting out a
and
little bit for me.
oh, I was just saying he was doing a bunch of hallucinogenics, and that's his like brand. Yeah,
Gotcha.
dude's not likable. I'm very annoyed he won MVP last year. Um, and he completely crapped his pants in the playoffs. And now he lost his star receiver Devonte Adams, who you'll never convince me didn't leave because he couldn't stand Aaron Rodgers anymore. But it is what it is. Yeah, I just don't really see. It's always tough to accept when you missed your chance to win a Super Bowl, and I just feel like the Packers, who have been slowly losing talent as Aaron Rodgers takes up more and more money, I think their window's just closed. Um, the Vikings, Heba Deba Durban, as they say.
Yes, yes, the Swedes.
Um, they are one of the most snake-bitten franchises in NFL. They've lost more Super Bowls than any other team. Um, Their quarterback is Kirk Cousins, who is the embodiment of white mediocrity. He's just good enough that coaches convince themselves they can win with him, but never good enough that you'll actually win a playoff game. He statistically has made $500,000. He's made more money than any player has ever made without endorsements because no one wants to do it. He can't sell shoes, but he can convince a team to give him too much money as a. Um, the most infamous play from last year is when he overthrew our receiver Justin Jefferson, who I might take with the number one pick in fantasy. And
Ooh.
you just hear because Justin Jefferson was mic'd up, screaming, "Fuck! Fucking throw it, Kirk! Fuck!" Losing his mind. Hell, the Bills' star receiver, Stephon Diggs, was a Viking, and basically was like, "I can't take Kirk Cousins anymore. Please trade me," and we traded for him. Um, and yet, people are really high on them this year because the Packers are down, and they have a new coach finally who seems like an upbeat guy. He's a former Rams offensive coach, and he's like, "I'm just going to have them throw the ball 100 times." But the Vikings are always, I will believe it when I see it team. All right,
Hmm.
final four teams. The NFC South, the Atlanta Falcons. Oh, God, do I have to say something about the Atlanta Falcons?
I mean, if you want.
Yeah, we're already deep. They're probably there's a chance they'll have the number one overall this year. They traded away Matt Ryan. They are kind of throwing in the towel. This year's draft class has one or two really really good receivers, um, or not receivers, quarterbacks. And it seems like the plan is bottom out, get one of those quarterbacks and start from scratch. Their star receiver, Calvin Ripley, got suspended for the entire year because he got caught using a gambling app when he was injured, which is a
Oh,
big
why,
no-no. They
why,
have a
why is
really good.
that a big no-no?
Um, basically, sports. Have you ever? Oh God! All right, short history story. Have you ever heard of the Chicago Black Sox?
No.
All right, short version. The White Sox win the World Series. They were super, super favored to win. And they basically, a bunch of mobsters convinced them to deliberately throw and put a big bet on themselves losing so they could cash out. It was a huge scandal. And basically, every sports league is really paranoid about gambling because the idea is if you're gambling on games, you either have inside information or you can tip things in your favor. Um, and the NFL doesn't want people to think games are rigged. Um, the only really interesting thing about the Falcons right now is they have a guy named Kyle Pitts who is a freak. He is one of the coolest players in the NFL. He plays tight end. He's like 6'6". He's two like 30. Yet he runs faster than anyone on the field. Like literally, he's theoretically uncoverable. He is like, assuming he lives up to the expectations this year, he will probably be top 10 player. And they also have a quarterback, Marcus Mariota, who for several years had nerve damage in his throwing hand, so he was struggling to feel the ball right, which is insane. The Carolina Panthers, Kenny Mack's team,
Yeah.
uh, they are the example of a team in denial. Like basically, so they had a credible quarterback, Cam Newton, who unfortunately, due to injuries and just kind of being beat up, really lost his luster. And they got rid of him, but then kept convincing themselves, all right, we don't need to rebuild. We just need to find another quarterback. So they've gone through like 7 mid-tier quarterbacks, and every single one of them's failed. And now they have Baker Mayfield, the exiled Cleveland Browns quarterback. Basically, the guy who Cleveland was so tired of, they're like, yeah, let's sell our souls for Deshaun Watson. Um, and yeah, their coach should have been fired last year, but is for some reason still running the team and still in denial. Turn it around. Their best player is Christian McCaffrey, who has played basically, I think he's played 14 games since 2020.
More than
He's
me.
yeah. Basically, they drove him into the ground. They gave him much and now. And basically, their best chance now is to lose as many. Hope that all hell breaks loose this year. They don't win any games, and they can just finally it's like an alcoholic. They just have to hit rock bottom and then come to terms with it and start rebuilding a better life. The Saints are the reverse end of that spectrum, where they're the embodiment of New Orleans, where every day you wake up hungover as hell, telling yourself, all right, I can't party tonight. I can't party tonight. And then you find yourself with a tie on your head, drinking 17 cups of coffee mixed with your
Ooh.
vodka. Basically, they they owe so much money in cap. Like, so in the NFL, there's a salary cap to keep teams from so the teams in bigger cities can't just spend as much money as they want. But you can kind of manipulate it if you push all the money toward another year. Basically, they just keep pushing all the money they owe year after year after year, being like, we can win the Super Bowl this year if we just spend a little more money, if we spend just a pinch more money. And this feels like the year it has to bottom out because not only is Drew Brees no longer on the team, but their coach Sean Payton, who really is one of the great all-time coaches of the modern era, is gone. But at the same time, that party vibe is so good. You're like, can they do this? Can they make a Super Bowl? Like maybe they can. I don't know. I'm drunk as hell. Let's do it.
Didn't they win a Super Bowl not too long ago?
Yes, they won in 2011 or 10, I believe.
Oh, that's
And
kind of long ago.
it does feel right. And they were like they are another example of a team that like felt like they missed their window because there was like 3 straight years where they were like not if not the favorite, one of the favorites. And the first year, it's like, all right, we just have to tackle this guy inbounds and the game ends. The guy whiffs on the tackle. Stephon Diggs runs for a touchdown. Saints lose. Next year, oh, we're about to score a touchdown. Uh, they don't call pass interference. We lose the ball. We lose. And then against Tom Brady when he was on the Buccaneers, oh, our tight end fumbled and that cost us the game. Like they just had these crazy calamities that kept them from winning a Super Bowl. And instead of being like, all right, we have to rebuild, they just keep going for that bourbon, baby.
Hmm.
And the last
Living the
team,
dream.
yeah, you got to live the dream. Whatever. If you have the money, spend it.
Yeah.
Uh, NOLA, as they say. And then the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers are
Ah,
my candidate for everything going wrong.
Gronk.
So, yes. Well, Gronk is technically retired, but he'll probably come out of retirement for the playoffs. A lot of older players are doing this now where they kind of either don't sign or make excuses to not play for a while.
Yeah, Tom Brady and Gronk did that, right? For the
Basically,
last
yes.
one, he was like, "I'll do one more if you do one more." That was the whole commercial.
And then, yes, Tom Brady retired and then came out of retirement. And it turns out he went into retirement because he wanted to basically finagle his way to the Dolphins. And the Buccaneers were like, no, we're not doing this. This is
Yeah.
ridiculous. And yeah, basically all you need to know about the Buccaneers is Tom Brady looked around and said, yeah, I don't want to be here anymore. And then basically got forced to go. And then he inexplicably went missing for like 30 days. And the team wasn't explaining why, to the point where people thought he was going to be on The Masked Singer.
Because,
Yeah,
what else would you be doing?
yes, their offensive line is decimated. They have a new coach who has been there for a while, but work. And yeah, I look. Sports commentary is filled with the corpses of people who question Tom Brady's supremacy. But if it was going to fall apart, this feels like the year.
And
And
Gronk was on Shark Week,
yes, yes, he was.
and he
And that
sold
covers.
underwear.
He sells men's grooming things. That's. I feel like I just. It's literally the meme of the person talking and the dog with the blanket on, just like, hmm. So we're gonna wrap it up there. We're gonna just do the NFC today and we will record the AFC before the first game of the season. Here are my quick trivia questions for you.
Sure.
Uh, Devonte Adams, the what team was he originally on before he switched teams?
He was on the uh the the Bills.
No.
He was
All
on the
right,
Wildcats.
everywhere. All right. This is a question about the 49ers. I mentioned they
Okay.
drafted that young quarterback Trey Lance.
It,
Who is the other quarterback in the open marriage?
oh God. The Kirk Cousins.
Just like I'll give you a hint. His
Okay.
last name starts with a G.
Mike Garofalo.
That's actually kind of close. Jimmy Garoppolo. All
Jimmy
right.
Garoppolo.
Final question. What team did I say has a chance to have the worst record in the league because they're screwing their quarterback over?
The Vikings.
The Bears. But you got the division right. All right. This is going to be a greater challenge than I thought. But
am,
until
am,
next,
am I winning, Dad?
no, son.
No.
All right. We're going to go play a game that you actually know. We're going to go play Fortnite.
Woo!
You know how to play that one.
I'm a
Until next
gamer
time, I'm Carter,
and I'm stupid.
and that was my attempt to explain football. Good night.